Looks like the alcohol's wearing off. Gotta put more alcohol in there. The greatest technician that's ever lived sent me his dad's TV motherboard. Now, if you're not familiar with the greatest technician that's ever lived, he owns a computer repair shop in Salem, Massachusetts. And unfortunately, he doesn't do micro soldering. But that is okay, because that's where we come in. To give some context, the greatest technician bought his dad a TV. And unfortunately, it looks like the EMMC may have failed, which is my assumption. Now, the greatest technician did reach out to Hisense, and Hisense basically said, we're not going to do anything for you. So let's see if we can beat Hisense's warranty and chase that fix. Now, the chip in question is this guy right here. So imagine this chip is like a laundry basket. And inside the laundry basket is the laundry, which is all of your data. I need to take the laundry out of the laundry basket, put it into a new basket, and then solder that basket onto the board. So let's do that. We're going to apply some flux, grab our hot air station and our fume extractor so we can start flowing this chip. Okay. And chip is off the board. Oddly enough, it's actually missing a pin here, and I wonder why that is. I don't know. But yeah, this is a traditional EMMC. And Hisense actually has the markings in paint for 2 different size EMMC chips. That's actually really funny. Now, while we're here, we're going to go ahead and flow some leaded solder. Now let's bring in our solder wick so we can wick these pads as flat as possible. Now, I did zoom up on the board here so I can show you we do have a couple of missing pads. Now, in this case, these are going to be no connects. A lot of these boards will have the pinouts for EMMCs, but they don't use every single connection on the board. As you can see, we have, like, for instance, a green trace here that goes from this pin to this pin, and these pins go out that way. These do not have any traces going to them, and sometimes you will have what they call vias, which will look something like this, where you will have like a copper trace in the board. But in our case, there is nothing like that, so it's just a floating pad in there, and if the floating pad comes out, that is pretty typical as a no connect. Now that our board is prepped and ready for the chip, let's go ahead and prep the chip for our programmer. First, we gotta add some flux. Then we're gonna add some solder to clear away all of this leaded solder. Bring in the solder wick, and we're gonna clear all these pads so they are flat and ready for the programmer. Let's clean off the chip with some PCB cleaner or isopropyl alcohol. Now let's place our chip in the EMMC programmer. We gotta make sure to line up this triangle here with the dot on the chip. Close it up. Now here's the moment of truth. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Okay, do we get anything on screen here? Let's try it again. Nothing. Okay, let's try it one more time. We're not getting any data. Sometimes if I add a little bit of alcohol to these pins, it will clean the pins up, and add a little bit of alcohol to the chip. Place the chip in the programmer. Close it up. Let's try it now. We got it. We got it. Okay, disconnected or something. I don't know. Let me see. Is the disc still present? Disc is not present. Okay, let's turn it off, turn it back on. Okay, the disc is here. Okay. All right, awesome, and we have our disk. Now we opened up a tool called WinHex, and this is actually gonna help us read the disk and dump the image. So I'm gonna read it real quick. That means it's probably encrypted. So yep, we can, looks like we got data here. From TV config, MISC recovery, boot. Okay, but here's the data. Okay, so we see data, so we see partition data here. Okay, in the meantime, let's create a new folder. Greatest Tech TV backup. We'll call this backup.image. Perfect. All right, so the source is our device here that we have connected in the top corner. And our destination is a raw image that we're gonna call backup image, and it's going to be in this folder here, and we're gonna save it to that folder. Yes, we wanna copy the entire medium. We can leave these as is, and it's basically going to dump every single sector that it sees from 0 to the end. All right, now we're just gonna let it hang out and get some data. Okay, so it looks like the chip disconnected there, so we have to cancel this. Looks like the alcohol's wearing off. We gotta put more alcohol in there. Okay, so the chip disconnected. All right, we're gonna go ahead and delete this guy just so we don't have a corrupt backup image. Okay, we're getting data. Hopefully this doesn't fail. Okay, we got 0 bad sectors, which is good, and all of the data has been completely imaged. Okay, great. Now we need to compare the data. Data source 2, we're going to select our EMMC. Okay, our chip disconnected. All right, let's go ahead and compare the data now that the chip reconnected. Nice. Okay, so we're gonna have to reconnect the chip. Okay, let's reconnect the chip. Okay, we got the chip connected. That's good, that's fine. And yes, yes. All right, so if the chip will read good, we're just gonna compare this data, and okay, the Chip disconnected. Nice. Yeah, you can definitely tell this chip is failing because it is sometimes disconnecting. So hopefully we can get a successful dump and make sure and verify the data is successful. Good. Search for differences. Hopefully the chip doesn't disconnect during this one, and we can compare the data and verify that the data backup that we have is 100%. I've got to compare the data to make sure that the backup image we took is identical to what data is on the chip. I was just going to say, this is heart-wrenching. I really want to see this thing work. This would be sick. Don't disconnect, please don't disconnect. Okay, there were some differences found. Let's take another dump of the chip. So we'll call this backup image 1, and we'll go ahead and copy another image of the chip. We're probably going to do this a couple of times until we get a consistent backup that the data is comparable and matches. The chip disconnected at the very end of that last read. That's terrible, man. Hey guys, sorry to butt in. It is Future Chase, but I want to explain a little bit about what's going on. So between this half and the second half, I had taken probably about 7 or 8 dumps of the chip, and they were all bad when I compared the data. Between all of the dumps, it took several hours. So now let's continue. Okay, so here's the deal. We did a compare with the EMMC and Backup 6 twice. Thing is that when I searched for differences, it found 2 different sets of bad sectors twice, even though I ran the compare file 2 different times. I think we just have corrupted data on the actual EMMC. At this point, because it looks like all of our boot stuff is there, more than likely what may be possible, and this is just barring that this whole thing works, we'll write the newest backup that we took of the disk to our new EMMC. In fact, what I will do is I will actually compare the backup 1 to the original backup we took, see if there is a lower amount of differences, and then we will go ahead and flash whichever one has the lower one, and then hopefully he'll be able to boot the TV into recovery and flash the firmware and hopefully fix any of those bad sectors. So basically we're going to take whatever data that we could get from the chip, we're going to flash it to the new chip. The chip itself, the new chip, will be fixed because it's when I say fixed, it's a new chip, but we flash whatever data we could get. But it looks like most of the partition data is there, and probably most of the data is there. So I'm hoping that any corrupted data might be just like apps that failed or something like that, rather than actual boot stuff that's going on. So let's go ahead and find that backup and compare it. Okay, so let's compare the original backup we took with backup 6 and just see how many differences we got. Okay, let's put our new chip in the programmer, and it read first try, which is amazing. Our source image is the image we took from the chip, and destination is our EMMC. Let's go ahead and start it up. Okay, all right, so the sectors were copied, but let's compare the data. Make sure the bytes are the same. Start at 0 and go for it. Okay, friends, this is where the chili meets the cheese. No differences. That means we have a perfect write from the image we took. So at least, we know our reader works just fine because we were able to write the entire backup image and then compare the backup image to what's on our EMMC. So we know for a fact the EMMC obviously is bad, the original. And because of that, that's why we couldn't get complete successful reads. So, we do what we can. We get as much data as possible and then write it to the chip. And in my experience, I was successful in writing data to the EMMC for the Wii U. It did bring over corrupted data, but we were able to fix that with a firmware update. So let's go ahead and reball our EMMC and get it soldered on the board. Let's add the paste. Now wipe it with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. And let's reball the chip. Man, look at them symmetrical balls. And that's the world's greatest reball ever. So the first things first, we're going to apply a little bit of flux. Make sure we line up our dot here with the dot on the board so it is correct. And it's almost there. Looks like we finally got it. Let's go ahead and do the jiggle. Boom. She installed, boys. Now we can clean off the excess flux off the board. Well, I took what data I could from the chip. I sent the board back to the greatest technician, Andy, and wouldn't you know, the TV didn't turn on. So he ended up just ditching the TV and ended up buying his parents a new one because, he can't wait. It's like life goes on. You got to get a TV, etc. This just brings us to Right to Repair. Why is Right to Repair so important? If I had access to the OEM tools for this particular TV where I could write the firmware to a new EMMC, guess what? He would have a working TV board. But because
all the options that I have is I can only take data from the chip that's already dead and try to flash it to a new chip. Then we're already screwed to begin with, because the chip is dead. There's nothing you can do. The chip the chip wouldn't connect, and then when it would connect, it wouldn't give me like the last million sectors of data. It's like, come on, man. Andy, thanks for sending out that board. It was awesome to see if it was possible to fix, and obviously it proves a point. Right to repair is so important, because we could have saved that TV from a landfill. I would have been able to if I had the correct encrypted firmware tool to write to a new EMMC, and we have the skills to solder the chips on the board. Are you kidding me? We just need the software tools. Come on, Hisense, give us the software tools.